Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Some of you know me. My name is Travis Crowells, appearing before you on behalf of the Kansas Motor Carriers Association today. Members of the committee that have been on, they've seen this presentation before. The new members not. This is serving as a kind of a high level of what the trucking industry is in the state of Kansas. It's kind of an introductory to trucking. Before kicking off, I do want to take a little bit of time and introduce some individuals I do have with me today. I have Patrick Feeney with me. He is a part of the KMCA lobbying team. You'll see him and myself around the Capitol. So if you have any questions on the motor carriers or trucking, please grab one of us. If we don't have the answer, be more than happy to find that for you and get that to you. Also with me today, I have our KMCA president, Jamie Bradley. He is volunteered his time to come up today. He is our expertise outside of the Capitol. He lives and breathes this every single day. So I want to thank him for making the time to come up here. I think it shows, our members do think the legislative process is very important and being involved and, making sure their voice is heard here. So again, thank you, Jamie, for making the time up here for that. One other individual I'd like to introduce, she is not here, Liz Eisnagel. She serves as the executive director for the association. Some of you of the committee know this, new members. We have an office down on 29th and Topeka Boulevard. We are contracted with the state to offer both renewals and registration for our members and other members of the motor carriers out across the state. Right now is a very busy time for that. It is the heart of the renewal period. She is down there trying to make sure that individuals that come in, it seems like that the office is busy from when that door opens to when that door closes of individuals coming in to get the renewals done. So she is down there trying to make sure that that's done in a timely fashion. I do want to give a shout out to the rest of the team down there. They do a good job of making sure that that process is quick and easy for those individuals coming in. So really appreciate them holding down the fort while I'm up here to give a presentation to all of you. With that, let's go ahead and jump in this. You should have a packet in front of you. It is Trucking 101. We'll be working off of that, examples there in the back, some attachments there that I'll point to. When the public thinks of the trucking companies in Kansas, they envision the big ones like UPS and FedEx. You see them on the road every day. They're delivering packages, it seems like, to my house at least once a week, if not more. But there are other companies out there. Kansas has very many small businesses as well. In Kansas, there are around 17,000 companies, and over 90% of those companies operate trucks that are 25 or fewer trucks. And actually 50% of the companies in Kansas are one truck, are only one truck. So we do have a wide variety of companies in the state of Kansas, ranging from hundreds of trucks to one truck. 49% of Kansas communities depend exclusively on trucks to move their goods. The trucking industry pays wages in Kansas about $4.8 billion. That's an average salary of roughly $57,000. The trucking industry in Kansas provides about 84,000 jobs. That's 1 in 14 jobs in the state of Kansas. You can go to your local grocery store this weekend, seeing all the individuals that are, prepping for the Super Bowl. Go Chiefs! I'm going to work that in there right now. But you count one of those, count 1 of 14 of those individuals, and more than likely one of those individuals is a part of the trucking industry in the state of Kansas. The trucking industry pays 42% of all taxes and fees owed by the Kansas motorist, despite only having 13% of the total miles traveled in the state. We pay about $385 million in both federal and state roadway taxes. As of January 25, a typical 5-axle trailer pays roughly $6,000 in highway user fees and taxes for the state, and about $10,500 in federal highway taxes, user fees and highway taxes. These taxes are above and beyond what the business has to pay as well. So on top of the business taxes, we pay these taxes. So the industry does try to provide their fair share to make sure that the infrastructure and the roads are up to speed. Throughout this presentation, I'll touch on, you'll hear four main types of carriers. The first one is a private carrier. That carrier, they transport their own goods out there for commerce. The four higher carriers are ones that transport their own goods for a fee. So for others, you'll hear interstate motor carriers. Those are the ones that transport goods across state lines. So they go from Missouri to Kansas, across the 48 states. And the intrastate motor carriers, these are ones that transport and do business only in Kansas. So they do not leave the borders. North, south, east, west doesn't matter, but they are within the border of Kansas as the intrastate. At the KMCA, we represent about 600 member companies. You'll see there at the top of page 2 a list of all the types that we do. I won't go into each one of these individually, but we do represent, from agricultural carriers to the towing and trucking industry. So we have a wide range of industry partners that are part of our association. I want to talk a little bit about what is required to be a company in the state of Kansas and drive on the roads. All motor carriers are required to have a DOT number. This number serves as really identification for them. You'll see it on the side of their trucks, majority of the time on both sides of the door. That number is used federal level for really the important reporting periods. It's kind of their identity. So if there's safety regulations they're doing, that number is attached to them. Kansas does have an exemption on that DOT number. Foreign registered motor vehicles operating within the state do not have to have that DOT number. They are exempt from that. They are also exempt from any of the FMCSA requirements. FMCSA you will hear quite a bit and see quite a bit in this presentation. That stands for the Motor Carrier Safety Administration operating. That's the federal side of the authority when it comes to what a motor carrier, they manage the motor carriers. If you do want to travel across state lines, let's say you want to go from Kansas City, Missouri, you do have to have authority from the FMCSA. There are requirements to get that authority, including a $300 application fee. There's liability insurance. It's about $750,000 for a normal carrier, $1 million if you want to haul gasoline, and a $5 million liability insurance if you're going to do any hazardous materials. So those liability insurances are pretty high for the carriers. You also have to pay any unified carrier registration fees. If you look at the top of page 3 there, you'll see those fees. Those fees are based upon the number of trucks that your company operates. If you have 2 vehicles, it's about $46 per year. And if you're operating over 1,000 of them, it's about $45,000 a year. So the more trucks you do, the higher fees you pay. To operate within Kansas, again, you'll see this intrastate for hire here. The authority to do that in Kansas, there are some requirements. That includes a $250 application fee, financial statements, liability insurance, cargo insurance, and attend KCC safety classes. For a private carrier operating in Kansas, you have some of the same requirements. There are some exemptions for the private carriers. But those requirements include a $100 application fee, liability insurance, and the KCC safety class. And we'll talk a little bit about safety later on. You also have to pay truck registration fees. These fees you can see on the attachment number 2 there in the back. They're based upon the gross weight. So for the example we have here, we're going to go to the 80,000 pounds there on the attachment number 2. To operate that semi-trailer combination in Kansas is around $1,870. You'll see at the top of page 4 there some of our surrounding states. Missouri is around $1,700. Our friends to the north are around $1,300. And Oklahoma is the cheapest one, around $1,200. Around $1,200. In Kansas, you also do have to pay on top of that $1,800, $1,870. Commercial vehicle registration fees. And you'll see that on the attachment there on number 3. Again, you're going to go off of your weight group and then your age of the vehicle. So for keeping consistent with the example, you have 80,000 pounds for all ages, that's $400. So to operate within the state of Kansas, that 80,000 tractor trailer semi-combination, you're looking at $1,870 plus $400. Well, let's say you want to operate across states. To operate across the multiple states, you have to be a part of the International Registration Plan. This is a method that they use registering vehicles that travel in 2 or more jurisdictions. So you're going to do Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska. They use this formula to calculate the fees according to the miles you travel in each of those jurisdictions. All those fees are then paid to your state where you're operating out of, so your home jurisdiction. So, if you're operating out of Kansas, those would be to Kansas, and then they distribute those fees to other jurisdictions. So at the bottom of page 4 there, you'll see we kind of did an example for you to show the calculation and how that's done. So if you're doing 50% of your miles in Kansas, you take 50% of that fee that's registered there, it's $935, and then so forth, 10%, 20% in Iowa, 10% Nebraska, 10% Oklahoma. So you see your total registration fees there are $1,700 and $1,708.50. So those fees, when they're collected, will be distributed to those states for their registration fees within those states. You also have to be a part of what is called IFTA, that is the International Fuel Tax Agreement. I believe the chairman maybe hit a little bit on this yesterday, so apologies if any of this is a repeat, but 48 states and some Canada province up there, they require motor carriers to report how much fuel they use within the borders of their own state, and then pay that fuel tax based on these reports. This fuel tax enables these jurisdictions to really assess those highway user fees on all the motor carriers that travel on its roads, and not just the fuel that's purchased at the pump. These are quarterly reports that are filed detailing the miles that are traveled in each of those jurisdictions, and this really ensures that those fuel taxes are distributed equally. Other fees that motor carriers have to pay include a federal heavy vehicle use tax. This is an annual tax of $100 for a gross weight vehicle of 54,999 pounds, and then $22 for every 1,000 pounds over the top of that. There is a ceiling on this tax. If you're operating at 75,000 pounds, it's $550. So if you go up to 76, 77, 78, it's still that $550. There is a tax on tires. Yes, we do have to pay a federal tax per tire. That's about $36 per tire, and about $648 for an 18-wheeler. There is a tax on new equipment. It is a 12% tax. So if you're buying a new truck or truck tractor with a gross vehicle rating of more than 33,000 pounds, or a trailer with a gross weighting of more than 26,000 pounds, you pay a 12% tax on that. I'm talking a little bit with Jamie. My numbers here may be a little small on the cost of what it is to buy a combination. We have about 150,000 on the example here. So if you buy something for that, which it may be a steal at this point in time, that you'll pay 12% tax on that for $18,000. I think it's a little bit more to cost than $150,000. I think we're pushing maybe $200,000 to $300,000 for a combination. So prices to buy these vehicles have definitely gone up, which means you're paying more in that federal tax, obviously. We do have to, like every other motorist out there, pay tolls for a 5-axle semi-trailer, to travel from the eastern side to the western side. That's about $33 for a K tag, and $43 if the customer is paying cash. Talk a little bit about truck size and weight limits. The maximum length that the Kansas law allows is 59 feet 6 inches for a semi-trailer. That's the industry standard is about 53 feet, so we're a little bit more on our maximum weight than what you see there as the industry standard. The maximum width of the vehicle is 8 feet 6 inches, and then the height is about 14 feet. We do have an exemption in Kansas that allows that 14 feet to increase just a little bit. If you're transporting circular shaped bales of hay, that goes up 6 inches. So if you're doing those, you can get to that 14 feet 6 inches. So it does allow for a little bit for agricultural partners out there transporting those bales. The maximum gross weight of a vehicle in Kansas that can operate on our interstate highway system is 80,000 pounds. Kansas does allow for a little bit heavier at 85.5 on other roads. If you're at 85.5, you cannot go on our interstate system, though. It is capped at that 80,000. Kansas does have an exemption to that 85.5 for agricultural products. There was a bill back in 2017 that was put forth, allowed for that increase in weight size, but it did come with some stipulations. It is a $200 annual permit that you have to pay to get every single year. Your truck has to, your combination has to be at least 6 axles. It cannot be under 6 axles, but it has to be more than 6 axles. And for reference on that, you'll see attachment 11 there in the back, kind of shows you a little bit of detail on what that would look like at the 90,000 pounds. And then any posted weight limits that are out there for bridges or highways, you can't operate that 90,000 pounds over the top of that. And then, you know, when the road surfaces are not the best with ice and snow, you cannot get up to that get up to that 90,000 pounds. That was a compromise that the KMCA did in the past to try to get that weight limit for our agricultural friends, to try to increase that to allow them to do that, while also trying to maintain the, you know, the infrastructure and make sure you're not putting too much strain on the roads out there. Lastly, I want to touch base on is our safety requirements that we have. I want to take a little bit of time and just say, you know, safety is a top priority for our association and our drivers out there. It is something that, you know, our association takes very seriously, and I know members of the industry do as well. If you look at your attachment 1, ATRI, which is the American Transportation Research Institute, they did a study on and researched this, and their research came back and showed that members of state trucking associations, not just Kansas, but those throughout the entire United States, are involved in fewer crashes and receive fewer violations, roadside inspections. It is something that, you know, our association does take very seriously. We have a safety council meeting that I believe is meeting next week for members to join and make sure that they're staying up to speed on the biggest, you know, the newest safety requirements that are out there, or any, you know, safety equipment that they can do. One thing that, you know, I was glad that they highlighted in this that I actually enjoy is there is a sharing the road program. This program takes our professional truck drivers and sends them to communities, and while they're in the communities, they teach motor vehicles, you know, the ins and outs of the truck on the road. So, you know, where the blind spots are on that truck, how to safely, you know, merge back in front of them, the stopping distances. So they try to teach anything they can to make sure that, you know, our drivers are sharing the road as well as the other passenger vehicles that are out there. But all of our, you know, we do have federal safety requirements that we do have to follow. All commercial vehicles and drivers are subject to these federal motor carrier safety regulations. I won't go into deep detail about these, but you can see them there at the bottom of page 8. You have the vehicle markings that are there, driver qualifications, including the CDL requirements that are out there. Emergency equipment has to be present. The lighting, you'll see trucks driving down the road. They got the lights. You know, some of them have lights all over, but they have the reflectors on there that have to be there. Liability insurance limits, which we already talked about. Texting while driving is prohibited in trucks, you know, when it comes to handheld devices. They have load securement regulations they have to follow, vehicle inspections that are done regularly, maintenance and repair. If a truck needs to be repaired, it does not go back out on the road until it is fully repaired. They will not send it back out there. There's hours of service they have to maintain, and then some pretty tough hazard material transportation regulations they have to follow. All of the drivers are subject to drug and alcohol testing. This includes a pre-employment testing, random drug testing that being done by the company itself, and then post-accident testing. So if you're involved in an accident, you do have to have that drug and alcohol testing done. Again, this packet is meant to be a reference for you all. Information in there is just a quick overview of what it is, of what trucking industry is in the state of Kansas. I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Committee, do we have any questions? Representative Neighbors.
Thank you. I'm on this side of the table today. Several years ago, we had some friends who were in a car and the truck had no number on it and it was white. This was in Wyandotte County. Came over a little too far, killed the people in the car. How do you find out? And they drove on because I don't think they realized what had happened. How can you identify a truck in that situation? White, wheels, no number.
No DOT number.
No.
Unfortunately, that may be a little hard to identify. Maybe some other markings, and we'll try to touch with the highway patrol here and see if there's anything that I'm missing later on. But the trucks are required to have that DOT number. If it doesn't have that DOT number, they're breaking more than just one law. They're breaking multiple.
And I don't want to steal any thunder from you, but we have Captain LaRoe in the back there. Can you stand up, Captain? And Captain LaRoe is in charge of the motor inspection division, is that correct? Would you be able to respond to the representative's issue maybe better than Travis could?
Good afternoon. Like I said, I'm Captain LaRoe with the Kansas Highway Patrol, and I'm head of the Motor Carrier Program enforcement for our agency. To answer your question, Representative, if the truck is not labeled, they may not have to be. It may not meet certain requirements based off weight and some other things. It should have registration on it, and we'd investigate that crash much like we would any other hit and run crash. We'll try and get traffic cams, Ring doorbell cameras to try and get a registration off that truck. We've had a lot of success in those type of investigations in the past. But to answer your question very simply, it's difficult, but it can be done.
Thank you. I had another question, but my mind just went blank. That's what happened when you're more mature. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I would encourage all of you, especially the new members, Captain LaRoe is a great resource, when you have some issues with trucking as far as an enforcement side of it. So kind of remember that name and never be afraid to try to reach out to the administration if you've got some constituent issues. They're always real helpful. Representative Neighbor?
My mind came back. Aren't they also tested for sleep apnea? I think that's a new requirement on a CDL, that they are checked for sleep apnea so they don't fall asleep at the wheel.
Probably a question.
Yeah, we probably better not and take Travis's time up if Travis is ready.
No, Representative, appreciate the question. Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I might have our president come up and talk a little bit about this sleep apnea. Yeah.
Sure. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Jamie Bradley with Doug Bradley Trucking in Salina, Kansas. So to answer your question, in a way, it is. So a part of what every driver has to go through is they have to have a DOT physical. And a part of that physical is where they measure the body mass index of the driver. If that body mass index is over a certain criteria, then the doctor could require a sleep apnea or some type of test in that case. But that's how it's addressed.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next on the list is Representative Minix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had questions about oversized and lengthed loads out in the rural areas. We see some of these trailers have like 12 to 14, 16 axles, and they're pulling extremely long. Are there any restrictions on what hours or days they might be able to run? And do the drivers with those, maybe the whole process, do they have to give a permit to start with? And are the drivers more qualified than others, or is it about the same?
To answer the last question, all drivers are qualified, I think, on an equal basis, whether they're doing a straight axle or a 7-axle truck. Yeah, there are some qualifications on, what they have to do for registration on those vehicles. If you look at attachment, off the top of my head here, it does talk, attachment 4 and 5 talk about the, kind of some definitions on the axles and how far those have to be, as well as attachment 5, kind of goes into the gross weight for vehicles and what they have to operate at, distance between your axles, the number of axles, and then the pounds that they can go up to. Mm-hmm.
Representative Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious. We have old Dominion trucking terminal in Parsons, Kansas, and they have a lot of these dual trailer vehicles that may travel somewhere, drop a trailer, and then they go on to another destination. Are there any special requirements that dual trailer vehicles have to satisfy?
Yes, thank you, Representative, for the question. There are some requirements that they do have to, qualify for and when it comes to regulations for. I don't have those in front of me, but I'm happy to get those and get them distributed to the committee.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
My good friend, Representative Wilborn.
Oh, no.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Travis. Good job. Got two questions. I know one's going to be tough to answer. On the back of this exhibit is this semi cattle truck. What's it cost per mile, adding up all those fields to run that thing over the road? You know, the IRS allows us 60 cents a mile for our private passenger auto. What's it cost to run that?
Great question. I don't have those statistics in front of me, but I definitely get those to you. I'll look into that and see if I can get that for you. Yeah.
And one more question.
Top of your head. Yeah. Just your segment imagery. Yeah.
Ed, what segment is yours specifically? Is it applicable to like a bull hauler?
It's the same number.
So what do you figure your cost per mile is? Come to the mic, please.
So again, we're not a cattle hauler, and then the industry is slightly different. We're hauling mostly dry van and refrigerated freight in box trailers, 53-foot box trailers. We generally figure that our cost to operate per mile today, and it goes up and down with fuel, but today is going to be around $2.25 a mile.
Thank you.
Does that include salaries, or is that?
That's all inclusive of the cost, yes.
And so what's just the actual cost of machinery, do you know?
Oh, for just the machinery portion?
Gas and-
Sure, yeah, if you're talking depreciation, insurance, fuel, maintenance, all that, you're going to be upwards of, it'd be about probably $1.80 a mile.
Thank you. One more question.
Sure.
A few years back, the motor carriers and the truckers gave these model trucks. Do you plan to do that again this year?
Go ahead. We've had a lot of internal discussions on the model trucks. I will say to be determined. Our trucking day is February 25th, so we'll know by then.
Okay, a couple of years ago in here, the Kansas Motor Carrier Association had a nice laminated sheet that had all of the placards and the meanings on it. Do you have access to those anymore?
We do have access to those, and I can get that for you, yeah, and get that distributed to the committee.
I would like that. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions at this time? Okay, Representative Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this may be for the captain from the patrol. I seem to remember that the substitute for Representative Weigel mentioned a white truck. And there are certain very special convoys that travel across the country with some very sensitive cargo. Do you coordinate with them in advance and make sure that the road's clear or whatever you do to make those things go through?
Mr. Chair, I think that is a great question for.
Thank you for the question, Representative. That is a good question. We do have some, what we'll call a Department of Defense type loads that do come through occasionally. They do not come often, right? They don't come often. They do let us know sometimes well in advance, but due to the sensitive nature, we don't always get a heads up. So to answer your question, sir, it is sometimes we're given notification based off their security and their parameters. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
I do want to make note of one thing. You know, yesterday we talked about EV registration fees, and there was some conversation about the real damage to the roads comes from the trucking industry. And I notice on here in your testimony, you know, we're talking about a $200 or $165 EV fee to replicate or to be comparable 175 in the bill, yes, to replicate what fuel purchases are and the registration fee. In your testimony, you have that they pay the state, a typical truck, $6,030 in state highway user fees and taxes. Do you know how many miles that's based off of?
I do not. I will circle back with, those numbers came from the American Trucking Institute, Research Institute. So I'll circle back with Atria and see if they have a breakdown of those miles and get those distributed to you, yes.
And then they also pay $10,000 in federal highway user fees and taxes. $16,000 total. I thought that was kind of amazing. It was higher than I thought it would be. Representative Ballard.
Thank you. It's a question. I just thought about it. When I was walking door to door this summer, someone asked, how many hours, I thought I knew the answer, how many hours can truckers drive before they must sleep? And how are you able to really guarantee that they are sleeping that amount of time between driving?
Yes, thank you, Representative, for the question. Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I might ask Jamie to see if he's got total hours and what kind of his, conversation is with on the sleeping part.
So truck drivers are regulated by hours of service regulations. Truck drivers may not drive more than 11 hours without having to have a 10-hour break, but it gets a bit more complicated than that. So in its most general form, you could drive 11 hours and then have to have a 10-hour break. For last many years now, we also have to use electronic logging devices that are built onto the trucks so that you know when the truck is moving. It cannot move without it knowing. And so we know, we can track it, it's all electronic, that a driver is getting that rest time. Now, if your question is, do we know that that driver is sleeping? There's no way for me to know whether he's in the truck sleeping, watching TV, reading, or anything else. I simply can know that that truck is not moving. But again, the regulations get a little bit deeper than that. So even though you can drive 11 hours and have to have 10 hours off, you cannot drive for more than 8 hours without having to have a 30-minute break. And the 11 hours driving that you can do must occur within a 14-hour window. And this is my interpretation of when they wrote that regulation, what they were thinking of was a 14-hour window followed by a 10-hour break would give you a nice 24-hour day. But in its simplest form, the regulation is 11 hours driving followed by a 10-hour break.
That's interesting. May I follow up on that? All right. In terms of sometimes when you're driving by, you'll see at a rest stop, all the trucks are lined up. Okay, so they have to keep their motor running. I mean, I assume they do because I always see them running. Okay, but what about the ones that are parked on the ramp? I've had people say, is that a hazard, a dangerous hazard?
It certainly isn't where we would recommend for our drivers to park because it is more dangerous. That is one of the problems that we do face in the trucking industry is adequate parking. Because from a truck driver's perspective, they would certainly rather not park there, but they are limited in a lot of fashions that they have to stop, that they, once they've run out of their time, they must stop. And so there is some leeway in those regulations that gives our drivers an opportunity to get to a safe haven or a safe parking spot. But drivers are limited in a lot of ways and unfortunately at times do end up parking on entrance and exit ramps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative.
All right, anybody else? All right, seeing no further questions, I'll go ahead and close the hearing on this. Thank you very much, Travis. And by the way, my community has a huge number of trucks that work with our beef packing industry and our ethanol industry and involved in crop production. And I just want to thank the trucking industry for their contribution to our economy. So thank you very much. Committee, I'd like to start trying to work through some of these bills right now. Representative Hoheisel. All right. First thing I'd like to do today is to return to House Bill 2031. That was the bill we were working a day or two ago, and there were some concerns about the qualifications to teach a motorcycle class. So I need a motion from someone to take 2031 from the table. There's a motion by Representative Hoheisel. Is there a second by Representative Proctor? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and return to House Bill 2031. At that time, there was an amendment on the floor, and it was made by Representative Essex. Did you make the second on that? Do you remember?
Yeah, I did. That's fine.
What would be better? Would it be better for us to just vote it down or ask the maker of the motion to remove it, Chris?
Yeah, since it was tabled, that just,
You don't think we have
Yeah.
to start with the amendment that was already in place at that time? Okay. All right, with that, we've got a corrected amendment to pass out to the committee, and then we'll have Chris explain it.
Mr. Chair, is this your amendment?
It can be whoever wants it to be their amendment. Would you like it to be your amendment?
You can say it's my amendment, just need a second now.
We have a second by Representative Delperdane.
Just don't ask me to explain it, please, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we'll let Chris explain it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, the amendment, thanks to the suggestion by Representative Proctor, first off, it would still add in that a driving instructor could hold a valid Kansas driver's license or driver's license issued by any other state. And then it still keeps the new language in the original bill in subsection B to provide further guidance for motorcycle instructors that they have to otherwise meet or complete all the requirements of the section and possess a valid Class M driver's license or equivalent license, allowing such an individual to operate a motorcycle for another state. I want to apologize to the committee. I was looking in the regulations in the wrong place last committee, and I do have that motorcycle instruction regulation available where they do provide even further qualifications for motorcycle instructors. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any discussion? Representative Proctor.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say thank you for tabling this and taking another look at the amendment, and I think this satisfies all of my issues.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Excuse me?
I got the motion and
Delperdane had the second. Representative Delperdane did. All right. There's no further discussion. Would you like to close, Representative Hoheisel?
yeah, I like to thank Representative Proctor for bringing this to our attention. I put a lot of hard work in this amendment. Chris did a great job explaining the intent that I had in this amendment. We're putting it together. So with that, Mr. Chair, I close on my amendment.
All right. With that, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, we're back on the bill. Are there any other amendments to the bill? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion on the bill? Motion by Representative Helgerson, second by Representative Exis. Is there any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Next committee, I would like to work House Bill 2124. And with that, we have a technical correction on the bill, and Chris will go ahead and hand out the correction and explain it. I think it's pretty evident to everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, you'll see on the amendment, I just referred to the wrong statute. I don't think that statute exists, so they have to comply with KSA 68-10, 114 as the same for all other designated highways.
You move the amendment or make a motion for the amendment. Second is by Representative Helgerson. Motion by Representative Hoheisel. Is there any discussion? If not, would you like to close on your amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, you know how I meticulously read every one of these and noticed this change as well, and the reviser was able to fix it. So with that, I close on my amendment.
Your quick mind and attention to detail continue to amaze me. There's no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Would you like your vote recorded? Motion carries. We're back on the bill. Is there a motion regarding the bill? Oh, wait. Yeah, we do want to stop on that, don't we? Committee, to help some of the things get through the process. Sometimes our friends in the Senate don't work quite as many bills as we would hope. I would like to insert the contents of House Bill 2105, which was that POW MIA bill, into this. So I would entertain a moment to insert the contents of HB 2105 into HB 2124. You said so move. Representative Neighbor, we'll let you have that. And Representative Hoheisel can have the second. Is that all right?
That is all right. She beat me to the punch.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Representative Biden?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the POW MIA bill, I do not have an amendment proposed, but I was wondering, they had mentioned if there was the potential to have it fully funded by the legislature. I don't know if that's something the committee wants to consider, but that was just something I remembered for testimony, or if we want to keep the existing funding structure.
I would warn the members of the committee that that is an extreme slippery slope and has huge financial ramifications to the state. Representative Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was about ready to say that. I mean, as many of these as we have, and they are all very worthy. However, if we waive that for one, then we'd have to do it for others as well. And I just would hate to, I mean, I've sponsored these bills myself, and I would have loved to have it paid for, but it just would not be good, I don't think, in the long run. Thank you.
Representative Hoheisel. All right. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, would you like to move your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the heavy discussion that we've had, I would move the amendment to House Bill 2124.
All right. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. With that, now we need a motion. Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we pass out HB 2124 favorably as amended.
Second. Representative Anderson. Okay. Any discussion? Not. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, committee. I have no intention to meet tomorrow. I do want to make sure that everybody knows what's on the agenda in case you need some light reading this weekend. We're going to do the threshold limit for allowing quarterly payments of certain truck and tractor annual vehicle registration fees, et cetera, et cetera. These are all Monday. HB 2261, providing Kansas Highway Patrol officer majors are to be within the unclassified service. And then another Highway Patrol sponsored bill regarding fees on ignition interlock devices. Next week, try to stay up. I'm going to try to give everybody a day every once in a while to think about the bills and get your amendments together. But when we get towards the end of the week, we're just going to have to really take action if we're going to get these things through the pipeline. So just kind of a heads up on where we are. So if there's no further business for the committee, we're adjourned.